Brilliant.
Excellent.
Okay, so today's panel discussion is about inclusive design. I'm here at Charlie Tango, a Copenhagen-based digital agency, and we do user-centered design, technical development, and data science. And we work with both private and public digital solutions, and that's why it is like crucial for us to have this as a default part of the way we work. So inclusive design is about making people feel included in the solutions that you do, whether it's digitization for public services or a bank or a payment product. We need to make people feel welcome. And I bet that we've all likely felt kind of excluded at some point of our lives, right? Maybe in the schoolyard and in the playground, that like not being part, or even for me being picked last on the football team, right? I mean, it's really not a nice feeling, and it can, if it's done like systematically and through your life, it can severely hurt you, right? And the same realization came to Kipling Williams. Kipling Williams is the professor of psychology at Purdue University. He's the director of the DEY department. And Kipling was sitting in a park one day. And he was kind of looking around and doing his work and taking the time off. And then he was noticing two people playing ball. So they were kind of tossing a ball between each other. And he was minding his own business when all of a sudden the ball came to him, and he was all of a sudden part of that game. So he threw the ball back, they threw the ball back at him, and now they were kind of these three people playing a game. But at some point, the two people kind of went back into what they were doing. I mean, he was not part of the group, and they kind of started or picked up where they left off. And even though Kipling was very much aware that he was not part of the group, he felt incredibly left out. And that made him really curious on, okay, this is a really powerful emotion. How come, even though I know that I'm not part of this group, I feel this being ostracized when it's even, that I don't know them. So he made a computer simulation, a computer game called Cyberball, and he invited a bunch of test subjects. This is done many times in many years, but he created the simulation of the situation in the park. So the idea is that you would invite test subjects in to play this multiplayer game, and obviously the game was programmed so that at some point it would stop tossing the ball to the user. And they would then, examine what that emotion was. And the interesting thing is that they were absolutely able to replicate the same emotion, and even with an like extraordinary low amount of tosses in the actual time spent playing together as three. Just a couple of tosses were actually enough to kind of spark that feeling of ostracism and being left out. And when then people were told that this was actually not live people they were playing against, it was a computer simulation, they were actually even more disappointed. This is a quote from one of the test subjects that that people will let you down, but computers aren't supposed to. But obviously we know that they do. And there are many, many reasons to be excluded. I mean, and that is only amplified with all the algorithms and intelligent systems and all that stuff that's kind of taking so many things into considerations. So it's not only about vision impairment or hearing impairment. It's a whole bunch of characteristics, right? You could be left out because of your age in some digital solutions, gender identification, race and ethnicity, sexuality, obviously your physical attributes, but also cognitive attributes. At least here in Denmark, there are an increasing number of people being diagnosed with ADHD, at a very late point in life because we were not able to kind of see them before. So that means that you know these people are in fact a lot in great numbers using your systems, right? Language, culture, religion, educational level. I mean, some solutions cater to a more specific tone of voice and wording, and not all people are able to do that. Political and philosophical opinions, and also social and economic what's the English word for that? Abilities, right? I mean, there are many of us, I think, in the agency business. We know a lot of people. We're well paid. We can do a lot of stuff. That's not like the huge majority of the people using our products. So I think by seeing the world as much more than just a normal and a not normal, I think that's that could be our setup for our discussion today, and I think that's an important thing to have. That'll be back to you, David.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rasmus. I can tell even by that, we've probably bitten off more than we can chew trying to do this within an hour. There's a lot to cover. But now, that being said, let's invite our other two panelists onto the stage. So Simone and Patrizia, if I could ask you to join us as well. We'll jump straight into it. So, hey, how are you both doing today? It's good to have you with us.
Well, good. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you, David.
Perfect. And you, Patrizia?
Thank you. Good to be here. Thank you for inviting us.
Perfect. Quickly in the chat, there have been a couple of messages. So Mauricia from Portugal, lovely to have you with us. Jess in Milton Keynes, where would we be without Jess? The event would not be happening. And then Sabine from Berlin. So already I can tell we've got an international audience out there, which is great. But to reiterate, it's an interactive session. Feel free to jump in the chat. Feel free to get into the Q&A. So just like that, I can see Christina, also in Portugal, has jumped in to say hello. So thank you all for being with us today. I gave a very brief introduction, probably didn't do any justice to any of you. So I will come around to each of you now, if you don't mind, just to let the users at home know a little bit more about you, and we'll go from there. So I'll come to you first, Simone, and then we'll fire around from there. So Simone, can you tell everyone at home a little bit more about you and your background, please?
Sure. So Simone Paul, as you can see, born in England, but in reality Italian. I would define myself, living most of my life in Italy. I've started to work in the payments industry in 2002. Was not expecting to work there. I hope to work in a marketing company like a Procter & Gamble and Nestlé. I found myself as a first work in a bank and started to love the payments industry because technology was changing, a lot of new opportunities. And then as a product manager, I love product management. There were tremendous opportunities. So I started my entire journey from banks, did all the payment spectrum from issuing cards to PayPal. And then now I joined Mastercard in 2016. And I love Mastercard. Why? Because it's not only delivering payments and technology, but also the role that we can have in the world, trying to enable, new payments technology, inclusion, financial inclusion. There's a lot we can do that just is beyond, generating revenues and making the shareholders happy.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I think there's a big opportunity there to have impact. I'd imagine in your role at Mastercard, people are using this every day, and the things that you're working on are going to have impact in society. So that must be super, super rewarding. Just in terms of that, do you prefer Simone Paul in terms of?
Simone is fine. As long as you don't have issues in pronouncing it.
Nah, I'll double check. I'd hate to get to the end of the webinar and realize too late. So perfect. Thank you very much for that introduction. Patrizia, if I could ask the same of you, please.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited to be here because accessibility is something I deeply care. So I started working in accessibility back in early 2000. So it was the time when in the UK, there was the Anti-Discrimination Act, Section 508 in the US, Section 255 for the telcos in the US. So it was an exciting time. And, I'm using a very old language. It was information superhighways, the excitement of bringing technology to everyone. It was a vibrant time. And I really felt my duty in contributing and making sure everyone could take advantage of that. So it's been an exciting journey, and for roughly 8-10 years, I was heavily engaged in accessibility as a freelance consultant, literally, both in Italy and in Europe. So I still work for the European Union as one of their digital inclusion experts. And I took on different roles, so from user researcher, now design operations, so always staying in the area of the user experience and always championing accessibility as something that we need to pay attention to. So today I work at 8x8, which is a US global telco VoIP company, where we are looking at accessibility very, very closely. Especially because all of us should. I mean, there's a new European law coming into force next year. So if you are in one of the public services, it's literally time to take accessibility seriously. So thank you for organizing this conversation and for this fantastic panel.
Thank you, Patrizia. I must admit, when we joined the warm-up call, Patrizia was like, I've got opinions. I'm going to tell them straight. I'm going to tell everyone exactly what I think. And I was like, welcome. This is what we want. This is what we want. Rasmus, I'll come to you. Obviously, they've met you already, but could you build a bit more on your background, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So originally, I'm from Film and Media Studies in Copenhagen University a long time ago. But I built a master's of human-computer sociology on top of that. So I've always been fascinated by how people and machines kind of get together in that interface, like both the actual interface, but also what are the consequences of us now all of a sudden living with computers. So I've been an information architect, UX architect, service designer, UX designer, building these user-centered products and services for the last 25 years. And I'm started out in Copenhagen and did a stint kind of in like a pan-European setup, working out of Helsinki, London, and Copenhagen, which was great. And then in 17, I came back to this place. This is my original place to start this work, and I've been here for a long time. And that's Charlie Tango now. And we spent a lot of time discussing DEI, equity, inclusion, diversity, because of the stuff we do. I mean, we do public solutions. We do, stuff for like citizen proposals, where like all the citizens of Denmark are able to raise an issue, and if there's more than 50,000 votes, the parliament has to discuss it, stuff like that. And obviously that is for everyone. There's no such thing as doing a narrow target group for that. So we try to really go all in on all kinds of equity and inclusive challenges, and to make sure that we get everyone on board.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rasmus. So that completes our panelists. Very briefly, I never introduced myself, but I'll do it this time. Why not? Jess will be very happy in the office. So I'm David Loughlan. I'm the founder of a business called Data Idols. It's very subtle. No, it's very subtle. Yeah, obviously get the branding in. So my background's in tech, working in data, working as a data engineer, and now I run a talent business, and I'll be your host for today. So we'll jump straight into it. Obviously, we're here to talk about inclusive design. We've talked very briefly about what that is, but I would love to know more about, what does inclusive design mean to you, and why it is so crucial, when building digital products. So again, same thing, setting the scene. I'll come to each of you in turn. What does inclusive design mean to you, and why is it so crucial when building digital products? So I'll go around in the same order, and then we'll start to mix things up from there. So I'll come to you first, Simone.
Yeah, no, as I said before, I joined Massacre because I wanted to have an impact, and I try to influence and the opportunities that we have there. And I looked also at the objectives that Massacre had. I was reading, they wanted to enable 500 million unbanked people population to be able to access digital products and a way to pay in remote areas. and also like small businesses. I work a lot with the small businesses, how to enable them and bring technology. So from my perspective is trying to look the end-to-end journey of like what are all the needs that these individuals, these businesses, these entities need, trying to map all the different parts and then making sure that they have the way to access those functionalities or those services. So you need to think about cost. Is it too expensive? Can they reach the access of the tool that they're using to pay or get paid? Do they need support? Do we as Mastercard need to work with entities, government, local entities, or other enablers to make sure that those things can be delivered and can be, I don't know, an example that I could make is about mobile access, how to make sure that there is enough reception or that a payment can go through, even though if you have, you don't have access to internet. Those are important things. Another aspect that is, I suppose, it's also important for you, David, is more and more about data automation and everything, like, because that is going to influence a lot in terms of inclusion, and we need to rectify a lot there, especially when we had models that were using databases or data sets that were biased and that didn't give the right level of access to financial tools and so on. So from my perspective, looking at the end-to-end journey, making sure, can we work from a technology perspective? Can we work on influencing entities that we have access to, and making sure that in the end, like the people can pay and get paid and have a smooth experience. So that's for me, digital inclusion.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Simone. I'll come to you next, Patrizia.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you?
Well, inclusive design is good design. And we are not talking about design as aesthetic. I always start from the principle that, just quoting Steve Jobs, good design is not how it looks like, it's how it works. So it's a very functional approach, because what we do is not art. We have, and we should be mindful of the constraints we have from a technology point of view, from legal point of view, and everything. But what we build as digital product, they should be accessible, inclusive by design. It's not an add-on, it's not an added value. It's an intrinsic quality of a good designed product. So the question is why good design is not so mainstream and popular. But that's perhaps for later.
Yes, we'll come back to that. We will come back to that. Thank you so much, Patrizia. Rasmus, what does it mean to you, please?
That was a book title, Patrizia. That was brilliant. I mean, for me, I think it's about, you know, opening up kind of the view of the world. I think the field, my field of kind of UX and use case driven design, where we, you know, figure out who is doing what and then building kind of flow through that, has been pushed by efficiency and wanting to do more features, and so I think that the field of design and kind of digital design and UX has been focusing on the main user and the main tasks, and that is leaving a lot of people out. So I think inclusive design is about kind of stopping for a moment and kind of looking broader to who is actually like behind the numbers, who's behind the personas that you do, and be more curious to see how diverse the world is, and then build for that. Because a lot of people will be doing the you know, need to do the same thing, but there's many ways that we can kind of leverage the knowledge that we have and just be more curious of the world, I think.
Amazing. Thank you all very much for kicking us off. We're up and running, which is a great start. I think, like, following on from that first point, just I suppose as a wider talking point, I feel like the world has been changing. As society, as people, we're aiming to be more and more inclusive in general. We're aware of inclusivity within society as well as within design, or hopefully we are. And I guess, taking your point from the introduction, Patrizia, you know, you've been doing this for a long time. All of you have got a lot of experience. How do you think the understanding of inclusive design has changed, you know, since you've started in the industry, from your own personal experience? And how has it changed since you started doing this to where we are today? And I'll maybe come to you first this time, Patrizia. Obviously, with that depth of
Okay.
experience going back to 2000. How have you seen things change over that time?
I wish I could bring some happy news, but the thing is, it hasn't. I mean, I started back in 2000, and the conversation we were having were implementing accessibility is time consuming. It limits creativity and it costs money. And oh, who on earth does understand vocab? Come on. 8 years after, still the same conversation. When I decided to kind of step out and be a little bit less active, it was, guys, we've been having this conversation over and over forever, and we didn't move forward. We had some excellent cases. I mean, I work with a very forward-thinking bank in Italy, and we created the first e-banking website in 2004. Amazing. You have spots of enlightened organization that see the social and economic value of it. But the large majority, it's an afterthought. If you look at the organizations, how many organizations have a really well-structured accessibility team? How many have a workflow that makes sure you test in a consistent manner? The fact is, we live in a society where we treasure so much and we value so much exclusivity that talking about inclusivity, it's counterintuitive by itself. We live in a society where we are unable to see past accessibility equals disabled people, equals a minority of the society, equals a small portion of the business, equals less users, less revenue, and less business. But if you scratch the surface, you will see that now that everyone is navigating and using internet in their cars, well, that's technology that started as assistive technology, text-to-speech technology. So the problem is, it hasn't changed, or not as much as I would have hoped for. But I don't know if the other two panelists can bring some more happy news than I could.
Yeah,
I mean,
Patrizia, including everyone. Well, that's what we want, Patrizia. So Rasmus,
Yes.
sorry, I talked over you, Rasmus.
yeah, no. I mean, I think, I mean, in Denmark, I think we are, I mean, we obviously, as an agency, we are reactive to what our clients are asking. And I think there is a change. I think there is an understanding that that it needs to happen. And I think when we look at the public tenders, more and more sections are actually about accessibility. And so I feel that it's definitely something that people talk about. And I feel that we see digital solutions change, and there's a huge discussion right now. There's a case in Denmark. It's 112, 911, like emergency call, where they have a service which is really smart, where if you have an emergency, you're able to receive a link for a video conference, and then you can kind of show what is the matter. So an old man, an old couple, and his wife is falling ill, and is very ill, actually, lying on the floor, and he calls 911 or 112 in Denmark, and they send him this link, and he's not able to press the link. He's not able, actually. And the idea is that they're able to kind of assess the situation, looking at the patient, but he's just not able, and he's confused, he's scared, he's afraid. I mean, it's such a stressful situation, and obviously everything is recorded. So kind of everyone is talking about, is that really a good idea? Again, for efficiency, we get it. But in this case, come on. I mean, let's take care of the people, right? So I think cases like that, where accessibility and inclusiveness fails, I think that hopefully that will kind of have people wake up.
Makes a lot of sense.
And I think like also like the effect that you have in terms of feedbacks and noise that you generate from really some of those poor experiences is really changing. I've seen, of course, I work with many corporates that probably, as you were mentioning, Patrizia, before, like they focus on revenues, just bring me the money, short-term gain, and then who cares about, I'll do something that is for PR maybe, but then I don't really care about inclusivity. Now that is changing, because every time there is a reaction to an experience, as you mentioned, Rasmus, like now the effects are, you can see them. And I can see, like, also sometimes things that were really simple are starting to come out that maybe even 10, 20 years ago we could have thought of, and now they're bringing them up. During the preparation call, if you remember, guys, I was talking was like, wow, yes, that was so easy. Why didn't we do it before? On the car for people that are blind, we could just change slightly the shape of the card so you could recognize by the touch if it's a credit, a debit, or a prepaid card. And that helps. We could have done it 20 years ago when I started working on the cards. We didn't. Now we have it, and it was tested, and it's like, okay, finally, and that's happening. On the other side, I think, of course, I'm seeing now much more focus on UX UI budgets. When you discuss about budgets, you are able to allocate budget for UX UI. That's amazing. Still not at the level that I would love personally. But another thing is working with, something in the past, again, these corporates wanted to deliver everything end to end. I own the customer, I own the relationship, I own the user experience, I own it, full stop. I do everything. Now, we're realizing that sometimes it's better to partner and make the people that are able to deliver better experiences to their job and support in the background. So as an example, from my perspective, I'm now trying to facilitate as much as possible the ecosystem. I want to work with all those companies that are delivering UX and front-end like experiences and the final last mile, and enable them, help them to remove all the barriers that they have in terms of compliance or managing a payment or getting a connectivity, all the things that help them so that they can deliver the perfect experience for the customers, for the consumers. I don't want to make control the full end-to-end. I think I need to be able to enable more the ecosystem and help it. And that's changing a lot. I've seen it change a lot in the last 10 years.
Fantastic. Great points from everybody there. And some of those bits that you've talked about, collaboration, they're definitely on my list. So we'll perhaps jump into that a little bit later on in the webinar. In terms of that, please do ask questions if you're joining us at home. I think I've seen one in the chat, one in the Q&A. If you can put the questions into the Q&A, that definitely help us. They can get a little bit lost in the chat. I just think, just to touch on a point that you made there, Patrizia, in terms of the balance between impact on society and revenue and economy and these type of factors, I imagine there's a constant battle between this is the right thing to do and this makes us money. How do you deal with that? What do you see in that respect? What's been your experience of getting that balance between society and economic factors?
It's education. I mean, there's no tension in there. The moment that you understand that opening up your product will mean, and making it accessible, it will mean people may engage more or longer, depending on the nature of your product, because it's easier. You remove a lot of the frictions that, let's say, art-focused, non-functional design adds to the product. Sometimes you don't have to have shiny animations because they may be distracting and taking away the attention from what is the focus, what is the goal that the user came to do there. Also, you can't expect that everyone today has the latest iPhone with 5G connectivity or the same level of education. I worked even in healthcare in the past, and this was a constant struggle because we needed to care for people in less developed areas which were working with 3G, which were working with old phones, with low education, or with English as not their main language. So we are talking about understanding that good business and revenue is made by making sure that everyone can make the most of the solution that we are providing. And that's how we generate revenue. Choosing by default to kind of flesh and show off certain elements that talk to a very narrow specific target means if you don't hit that target, you lost everyone else, and your investment is not appropriate. It's really not attention. It's an education bit, especially to leadership that don't see that and that struggle to see that, because we are not just talking about the minority of population that has a disability. I mean, I break a leg, I have often eye infections, I'm blind more often than other people in the sense that I can see a screen, because so I need to have support, I need to be able to enlarge the screen, and hey, I'm a user, and everyone else has needs that change constantly over time. So all we need to do is to clarify what is the real goal. It's the image, it's function, it's engagement, it's getting the user in the room and educated that accessibility, it's not an extra cost, because the moment that you start designing with accessibility in mind, everything just works. It's not an afterthought, because then it's too late. And it doesn't mean losing business or making things ugly. It means opening up to segments that may have no other choice.
Fantastic. Great point there, Patrizia. Do either of the other point to add, please, Rasmus, jump in.
Yes, I mean, I think that those are very great points, and like history is filled with great examples of technology coming out of accessibility need, right? I mean, Vint Cerf did the first email client because he was having hard time, communicating with his wife. They were both hearing impaired. Subtitling captions are developed by the BBC in '79. Because of the hearing impaired, now we're using it on YouTube and the subway. And I think that, I mean, so many examples where you build for a specific disability or something and then extend it to the rest of the population. I mean, it's just better for all of us.
Perfect. Keeping the conversation flowing, I'll jump to you, Simone, on the next point, and then we'll go from there. There have been a couple of questions come in on the Q&A, so thank you for doing that. We'll take one more question from me, and we'll get to both of those questions that have come in straight after. I just guess in terms of what we're talking about then, it sounds like there are a lot of things to consider. There are a lot of potential barriers, but I'd be intrigued to come to you, Simone, first. Are there common barriers or challenges that people face when accessing digital products? What would be the, perhaps number one thing that springs to mind for you as a potential barrier?
Well, as I was mentioned before, from my perspective, a lot now is coming from the consequences of automation and how you get access to those tools. So I feel that is really becoming issue that we need to address at all levels, and maybe the regulation will support there. Because if I still, we're talking about, I've seen many models for to support, like, of course, lending, or like providing other services like credit cards, or giving access to financial solutions to small businesses. And then you look at why some of the things were declined or not given the right level of amount of money. Then if you look, it's the amount of the quality of the data, the biases, how do you look into these? As an example, like right now, and I'm seeing this because I'm trying to get approved in terms of making things easier to consume, like from the developers on just a chatbot to make sure that people can consume better my integration guide. We now, as Martica has a really, I'm going to say strict, but really governance, AI governance, it goes into look all the data, the quality. Are you cleaning it up? Are you making sure that you are using an ethical point of view? You try to avoid the issues that we've seen in the past, and that's impacting a lot. And that's really close to my heart. I would say something that I really want to push from that perspective. And you'll see it more and more, because there's also another effect that is coming there. You see budget constraints. We had a hype of money being everywhere, being investments everywhere, people getting money just by using keywords. But then now we are in the opposite phase, where all the corporates, everyone, are shrinking down the investments and the budget, and you need to do things with better tools. The more you rely on automation tools, the more you open yourself to these risks, and the impacts on inclusivity or even accessibility are massive from my perspective.
Yeah, that's an area that close to my heart as well, actually, and it runs really deep, doesn't it? You know, you can get biases within the data, and then systems are built on top of it, and it just
but also simply on recruitment, like from my perspective, also recruitment, like how can you make sure that you change gender equality, or making sure you hire, give opportunities to everyone. If I try to hire product managers, as I am in the payments industry, you will probably find a lot like me, like white men with that kind of background. And how do we fight that? How do we make sure that those things are clear? And it goes back into the, I mean, inclusivity, especially in the financial industry.
I feel like this is a separate webinar. Just me and you. We'll have a separate one about recruiting people diversely. We'll be on it. We'll be on it. But I will come to you next, Rasmus, if that's okay. I appreciate it's a broad question, common barriers. If you were going to pick one thing just to call out on the webinar now, what would you pick?
I would probably pick two things. One, as Patrizia already also said, that it's not more expensive to do the right contrast level in your design. It's not more expensive to have the right size for text. So if you, I mean, every year WebAIM does this sweep of the million biggest websites in the world, and like 96% fail. I mean, and the main reasons for that is low contrast or missing alt text on images, you know, all that stuff. Like the 10 most seen faults there are not hard to do. I mean, they're literally not hard to do, and they're not going to cost you more from a development point of view. So I think just getting the basics right, come on, people, right? And then I think on top of that, to support what Simone is saying, that absolutely bias in data right now is the biggest problem that we have. I mean, and it's so important for us to remember that then an algorithm is a direct manifestation of the people who create it, right? So it will inherit their world beliefs, it will inherit their biases, their understanding of how things should be, who's important, who's not important. And that is just like multiplied by the thousands, right? I mean, it's such a potential tool that it is so important that we have some government regulation on it, and also are super obsessed with the ethics and the inclusivity of how those algorithms are created, I think.
And sorry, can I just like with what you were saying, Rasmus, like in terms of like the easy things to do, web accessibility and things like that. And especially if you start from when you're building something, you embed it from there, that's easy. Now, of course, the problem with the corporates is like when they already have legacy platforms, they already deploy their website and everything. If you, unless you go back to what we said before, like there is a PR incident where because you promised to have WCAG on a website or other things like that, and hey, someone was not able to access your website because of this and that, then you have like the storm coming and finally getting the budget. But yeah, that's still the situation right now.
Perfect. I think for me personally, it's embarrassing, but alt text was not in my world. And then 6-9 months ago, I was like, as soon as I noticed it, and now I can't unnotice it. So part of it, I think, is getting it into the the right mindset and going from there. But I'll come to you, Patrizia. Last but not least, what would you call out as common barrier or something that you would bring to the table at this point?
I will be repeating myself, but it's education. It's about learning about it, because it's true. Some financial institutions or big corporations have legacy, but we are talking about accessibility since the late 90s. We are not talking accessibility in the last 3 years. So, reverse engineering would be a big issue. We have been growing and developing with accessibility as an afterthought. And yes, there have been countless attempts for regulations. I mean, Italy tried in 2004 with a law. They had some sort of certifications. The European Union has some non-mandatory directive before. Yes, there is something, but a law doesn't create a mindset. So what is missing is a mindset where we detach the stigma from the word accessibility and inclusion, and we create a positive vibe where the norm is to be inclusive. The norm is not to call out, oh, I can't access this website because my technology, my connectivity, my language, my condition. It's an exception that shouldn't be happening. To be inclusive means you don't have distinction among users and people, because everyone brings the same values, brings the same monetary value, ethical value, call whatever you want, but we are all here to make society together. So, and the big gap stays in the fact that a lot of the decision makers don't see it. So probably the biggest failure that people like me, I mean, I wrote books, I did a lot in the past, failed was to learn the right language and to speak to the right people, to make sure accessibility is not something the bottom is pushing up, the smart designer, the smart manager, but the stakeholder understand and ask for and wonder if it's not there.
I promised I was going to go to the 2 questions in the Q&A, but based on Patricia's point, you're going to prove me to be a liar, because I'm going to keep this going a little bit longer, and we will come to the Q&A, and please do ask any more questions that you have there. But taking your point there, Patrizia, it almost feels like, you know, organizations talk about their culture and have a lot of conversation. Well, what is the culture of the company? How do you build culture? And no one's quite put their finger on it, and you know, no one can quite explain it and stuff like that. And it makes a lot of sense to me what you're talking about. You know, it's a way of thinking, it's education, it's building it into the fabric of the design teams and the company and all that type of stuff. So it's a big question, but you know, how do you do that in an organization? What would be your tips? And again, I'll come to each of you perhaps to speak about your companies and your experiences, but how do you build this inclusive mindset, this inclusive culture to design within an organization?
Well, I can start telling you what I've been doing recently. I just start bring in, hey, dear stakeholder, have you noticed that 2025 is not that far away, and there's a new European law, and by accident, we fall within the category that should be mindful. And then simply come up with ideas. So I'm trying to push to create a program where we institutionalize accessibility testing within our workflows. It's my work. I design processes and workflows. So by getting the attention from the right stakeholders and saying, oh, yes, this is something. I'm building a business case because we want to partner with charities. We want to involve people. We want accessibility to be part of the daily workflow. But it's not something that you tell, it's something you do. Telling it's easy, doing it and start preparing all the decks with the business case and the numbers, because you still have to justify every decision. It's what matters, because just saying that we need to do it doesn't lead anywhere. So I identified my my best friends and my partners in crimes, people that are passionate and want. It's, I would say, not a kind of a pet project. We dedicate 20% of our time to that. And we just try to have an impact and change things. Will we succeed? Will we not? We tried, but at least we have now someone that is listening, and we are building the conditions for doing it. So my tip is don't complain, don't say it, do it.
Love to hear that. And I'm absolutely shocked that you have partners in crime. I can't believe it, Patrizia. Imagine that, everyone. Patrizia has partners in crime.
Of course.
What about yourself, Simone? You know, how does it work at MasterCard? How does it work in the teams that you've been in? You know, do you have this mindset, this culture of common language, perhaps? You know, how do you describe it?
Yeah, it's going in that direction. Of course, like one thing, and regulation always helps, always forces things from the right point of view. This is I think, starting from, I don't remember, it's already 2 years or 1 year, but like simple thing, follow the money, look at the money, when you hit the bonuses and so on, and the part of the bonuses are linked to ESG objectives, clear ones, simple ones even, you start to see a shift. So right now I can see that as an example in our processes that are defined. I honestly hate a lot of the processes. I try to avoid them as much as possible. In some cases they're needed. You need those checkpoints. And if you embed as a checkpoint that whenever you release a product, not only you need to have the documentation right or do the training for customer support and everyone else, but you need also to have like the UX, UI validation and making sure that you make it accessible. That's already changing, and slowly you're able, if you're talking about a corporate again, to migrate and change the most of the assets. Now there could be other questions, I think, or situations where you may be in a company, a young company that is just focused on growth and wants to do and just be out quick with the functionalities. At that point, maybe is more acting yourself, as you were saying, Patrizia, like get it done, do it, try to embed it in everything you're pushing out, even if you're just focused on getting as many customers as possible. And maybe regulation is a little bit, okay, let's do it. And then if we screw it up, then we try to fix it. But try as much as possible yourselves as designers or people that are doing this job to embed it and suggest it and do it while you do your job.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Rasmus, anything to add from yourself, stakeholder management?
Yeah, I think I totally agree that we do it, and being an agency, we're often just a bit outside the organization. So a lot of times we are brought in like the third party who can either do criticism on an existing solution or a page that we have, like products design or product owners at the company say, hey guys, can you come in and just I don't want to say it, but and we're absolutely, that's great. That's like being the drunk uncle in the corner of the party just shouting things out. We can do that, but we do it both from by the work that we do, so kind of grassroots, like making sure that all the contrasts are right and all the types and all that stuff is done right without asking. And then obviously a lot of the companies that we work with, they have their own CVIs and brand teams, and then obviously it's about taking their brand and making it digital and making it accessible, and that's just a normal part of what we do. And then from the top up, that we absolutely work with stakeholders, talking about you don't want to have this exclusive product in the corner somewhere. You want to have it out for the entire population, so it's multi-layered.
Amazing. Thank you, Rasmus. Again, referencing a drunk uncle, I could never imagine you being that drunk uncle. Cheers. Amazing. We will get to the Q&A now. I'm conscious we've still got 10 minutes left, plenty of time, so we're going to take some more questions. But for those of you out there, I'm really enjoying myself. Hopefully you're enjoying it at home too. Please do feel free, stick a little thank you, a little emoji in the chat, just to let the speakers and panelists know that you're out there and you're enjoying their input today. And I'll call a few of those out between now and 2 o'clock when we finish. In terms of the first question from the Q&A, I'm going to come to Alexandra. Alexandra's asking, what is your big advice for junior designers that are just starting regarding inclusive design? Who would like to take that one first? Rasmus, come on, sir.
I'm actually feeling the opposite. I mean, we are hiring people in their 20s right now, and you guys are super purpose driven and super aware of what's the right thing to do. So my recommendation or advice would be to stick with that. I mean, you're going to see a lot of resistance from big corporations and from big companies who've done things in the same way. I mean, you're holding the long end of the stick. I think keep doing what you're doing and just push through.
I love that. Very positive. Very positive.
And I would say, like, you, as you said, do it and find the ways to do it, because even if you work in a corporate, you maybe just find a grumpy old person like me that doesn't know anything of what you're doing, and in the meantime you're delivering solutions that are inclusive, but I'm not even aware. And unless of course I look at the budget and I see a massive cost, at the point someone would react. But please do it. And
absolutely,
like in my team I always say, let's beg for forgiveness afterwards, but let's make these things happen. Don't be shy about that.
Perfect. Patrizia?
Yes. Oh, yes. Just do it. There's nothing wrong in doing the right thing, right?
Love that.
So,
Love that. I'll layer one more thing on top for on Alexandra's behalf. You know, keeping that conversation going. You know, assuming you are starting out, sounds very positive. They're already in a much better place than perhaps some of us older dinosaurs, which is great. But in terms of resources, starting points, would you recommend any books, tutorials, blogs, podcasts, YouTube? What would each of you recommend in terms of following up on this topic?
I mean, I right now I have like 3 go-to resources. One is the designjustice.org, the Design Justice Network. It's more. They have 10 principles, which are greatly formulated. There's a book also, and I think that is really cool. Another thing is the Alley Project. Great resources, very specific, very pragmatic. I can post all 3 in the chat afterwards. And then in Denmark, together with the Danish Design Center, sorry, we did something called the Digital Ethics Compass. Actually, it's a small kit for small, medium-sized companies who kind of make sure that they're using behavioral design, automation, and data handling in an ethical way, but broken down into kind of 22 segments. I think those 3 would be my go-to.
Thanks, Rasmus. Alexandra's been in the chat already. Please do post them. So we're going to hold you to that. So as we're coming to the other 2, if you can post that would be amazing. Anki has also followed up. Links to those would be amazing. And just as we're there, Karen has said, this is so valuable. Thank you from a VI user. Chloe, thank you. Really enjoying the discussion. And Marwan, thank you with the prayer emoji. So it's nice. Really appreciate you jumping in there and saying thank you to the panelists. I'll come to you next, Patrizia. In terms of resources, further reading, is there anything that you would call out that you would recommend to people?
So yeah, I would call out, I'm just learning now that the Paciello group has been rebranded in TPGI. I mean, they are a historic group that really built everything around accessibility and information training. I mean, my first training back in Paleolithic 2000 was with the Paciello group. So that's when I started, and I think it's still a really good go-to place. And in the UK, we have John Hassel, who is super active. He's coming from BBC. If you have the opportunity to look at his videos, join an event, he is talking. He's always someone good to listen to, and I will just post the link right now. And I think few resources, but good resources are better than a lot. So I stop here so that Simone can share his ones.
Thank you, Patrizia. Yeah. When you post those links, if you could just change it to everyone in the drop down, that would be the people at home can see those links as well.
Oh, yes.
Simone, over to you. Sorry.
Yeah, and from my personal perspective, I'm less of a UX UI type of person and designer. I'm more a product manager. So I have like at least 3 podcasts that I go around in circles like every day to find the part that is more inspiring from my perspective. And then jumping a lot, of course, in AI, again, podcasts and books and reading, because that's also, as we were mentioning before, like something that I'm deeply concerned about and trying to solve as well. So I'll post as well some of the links of the podcasts that I usually use. A lot of reading, but also starting from simple ones. So I just started now reading Hannah Fry, the latest book on Hello World. I think that's also a nice way to start on how to interpret, like how to be human when managing data. So that's also an interesting one.
Amazing. I do like a book recommendation. Hey, there's all these podcasts.
It was funny yesterday. I was around with the book, and like some of my colleagues, young ones, were like, "Oh, what's that?" It's like, it's a book. It has pages. You read it, you know.
It's a book.
It's not digital. It's a book.
If there's going to be a quote posted when we post this on YouTube, it's just it's a book, and then we'll jump into the webinar. In terms of another question that's come in from the audience, talking about inclusivity metrics, it goes back to a point, I think, Simone, that you were talking about previously, linking it to bonuses and, you know, actually measuring inclusivity and stuff like that. What would you say about inclusivity metrics? Is it easy to do? Is it hard to do? What would be the examples that you would perhaps look to measure inclusivity?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it's a really, really good question and not easy to answer. Absolutely, especially going back to financial inclusion, because where do you measure it? How do you measure it? Like, do you measure it looking at the different, the variables, let's call them variables, Rasmus, that we were mentioning at the beginning in your slides, like how do you make sure that you have the same type of penetration, give the same type of access to people, no matter what of the distribution of those variables? Approval rates, looking into the data. So it's really difficult to look at that. Mostly is comparing, like, from when you change some of those variables, how is the approval rate, or like the accessibility of some of those tools, how does it really change, and how to drive it higher. That's one important one: approval rates and access to the tool and functionality. Not a great straightforward answer. It's more maybe easier when you deep dive into each single product, like what is a specific metric in that case. Of course, if you're talking about the website and the front end, is like in terms of people that can access, of my users or my customers, are they all able to use it, access all the functionalities that are there? That's another metric. How many people are not able to use it? That's another thing. But then we go into the bit between accessibility and inclusivity as well.
Thanks so much. I'll come to you next, Rasmus. Is there anything that you would add there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously looking at the analytics, as Simone is saying, right, looking at how people are behaving on your products, but also asking them. I think enabling like feedback loops, so that if there's a page that has a particular problem on it, you would have people being able to tell you about it, and then also do like bigger surveys. I mean, if you have a service or a digital product going, from time to time, hit them with a questionnaire. I mean, in the best way that you can without annoying people, right? But just asking, and if you see a specific target group opting out, I mean, again, be curious. Why is that? What are we doing wrong, and what did we change? Sometimes it's the minute changes of one place that kind of butterflies into stuff other places. So having your ears open and making sure that you get the data that you need to do the decisions. I think that's
listening. Good point.
Great point. I spend a lot of time talking with data scientists, and it sounds similar. You know, to be a good data scientist, you have to have a whole bag of skills, commercial awareness, understanding what you're working on, not just the detail. And it sounds like here as well, you have to understand the product. Each product's unique. Each types of users are unique. So it's really, there's no one size fits all by the sound of it. No,
absolutely. And I think here at Charlie Tango, we're working like intensely during the last like 3 or 4 years to merge the craft of service design with data science, because there's so much in common. Obviously, we're very different people sometimes, but there's so much we can learn from each other. And I think together we build each other stronger, so we can do even better stuff.
Amazing. Patrizia, yourself.
Yeah, I would just add to all the goodness that have been already shared that there are also ways to intercept users that use assistive technology on your product. So we are actually working on a solution like that, so that we can track them and funnel them and better understand, call them out to see what are the differences between their behavior, their metrics, and those of people not using any type of assistive technology. So there's a lot. I mean, technology is amazing. We can do a lot. We just need to think about how to exploit it in the right way.
Perfect. I'm a little conscious of time. We do try to keep these things to around about 1 hour. So we'll bring things to a close now. Just one final point, I guess, from each of you. And it kind of leads in. We've talked about quantitative metrics. We've talked about the data. Rasmus, you've then gone on to talk about a little bit what you would probably say is more qualitative feedback. You know, it's speaking with people, it's gathering, it's talking. And it sounds like that is as important as the quantitative data. So would any of you like to share any tips in terms of gathering that qualitative data? Should it be surveys? Should it be workshops? Should you be picking up the phone and talking to users? You know, what would you say about, just to wrap things up, that qualitative piece and understanding?
Yeah, I could say like an example that sometimes we try to. There are two examples. Maybe one is just the customer service. If you have the customer service, the customer support, the first line, just sit down and listen to some of the conversations. If you can go through them, you will see a lot of the things that are coming out that are super important. But also listening live, that's a good one. And another thing, as an example, we do also B2B services. So what we do is like, maybe can you sit down and spend a day close to someone that is consuming your products and see how they use them, and be a silent observer, and then get the feedback and do it 1, 2, 3 more times. Of course, like then there are other tools that you can do and that you can use, but sometimes like also the direct experience is super important.
Thanks so much. Just before I come to you, Rasmus, I did see your message there, Patrizia. You do have a hardish stop. Have you got a couple more minutes, or do you have to drop off?
Just a couple. I have people pinging me on my other laptop.
Is it? I'll be super quick then. You have to be here for the thank you. So Rasmus, just super quickly, is there anything that you would just add there, and then we'll draw it to a close?
Yeah,
and we'll go from
absolutely. As Simone is saying, like, be curious on the people that you do have, but then there's also all the people that you don't meet, all the people who are not yet clients, not yet users. You should really be interested in getting to know them, because why have they not chosen you as a supplier? Why have they not chosen your services?
Amazing. Thank you so much. Well, how fun was that? I absolutely loved it. I feel like we could sit here for another hour talking about it. I kind of wish we were in a pub talking about this, perhaps with a glass of wine or whatever. But I'd like to thank all of you so much for giving up your time. I know you prepared for it in advance. Rasmus pulling together the slide deck, and I joining prep calls, thinking about all of these things. So thank you so much for being part of the community and supporting the community. And thank you all very much for joining us from home. I can see a few comments coming in there. Sabine, big thanks to everyone. Alexandra, thank you all. Brilliant. Thank you all. So it's nice to know that you've been well received and respected within the community. So thank you all very much. I hope to see you all again soon. Those are at home, and also each of you panelists, if we get the chance to do it again, I'd absolutely love to. But thank you all very much.
Thank you for organizing.
Good to meet you.
That was great.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.